So here we go.
Here we go.
All right, can y'all see the slide there with me rubbing my forehead?
Yes.
That how you felt when I called
Troubled.
yesterday?
This was a screen off of the last video I did, and I said I gotta grab that. And so anyway, okay. So what we're talking about is I got three or four questions, and this one, thank you, Melinda, for submitting this one to me. Had to go searching for this one. If the tenant doesn't submit the first month's rent and deposit on time, is the lease dead? Now, what we're talking about here is when we're just trying to get the lease going. And the question has always been, is the lease enforceable at signature, or do you have to wait till money's in hand before it's actually legal? It'd be like, well, when you're closing, what do? It's not done till I got money in hand, right? As a seller,
Right,
we're not
right.
closed. Everyone signed everything, but I have no money, then we're not closed. In the lease world,
The signature.
um, I took this to David Robertson, and he's like, well, and he said, Anthony, what's a lease say? I said, I can't believe you're asking me that. He said, I gotcha. I'm like, yes, you did. So we went through it, and what we found is paragraph 28 of the paragraph. So because the lease is signed, so it is in force. They
Right,
just haven't gotten, and because the deposit and the first month's rent is considered rent. So it falls under the failure to pay rent clause.
right.
Okay.
Mhm.
So this is paragraph 12B. Failure to pay rent. Tenant's failure to pay any installment of rent. That would include the first month's rent and the land, and in Virginia, the deposit. When due, when was it due? Well, if it was due before the quote unquote lease begins, then that's when it was due. If it's due on the first, that's when it's due, not the fifth. However, if tenant does not pay rent within 5 days after the landlord has given a default notice, boom, so we got to back up. They may be late, but in the lease, the landlord has to provide to them a notice to tenant of failure of payment. Well, there's a form that's actually that we have that it's really between the landlord and the tenant, but it's a form that we have we can offer to them. Now, since this particular lease, they really hadn't started, meaning they hadn't crossed the line of we've moved in. We were still in the throes of getting that finished. So we got the notice to the tenant for the landlord. Whether he wants to fill it out or not is up to him. But he's got to submit that to the tenant, and then they have 5 days to get everything in. So and if they can't and they don't pay, then the landlord can move to void the lease. Okay. Any questions on that one? Because once you've signed off on it, you have a lease in place. It's now about gathering money. I mean, these tenants not starting out really well with missing the deadline. And Melinda, you want to touch base on that one?
Yeah, so I called Anthony yesterday because my client was like, "Hey Mel, did you get paid for my rental?" And I said, "Oh no, not yet. It takes a few days." I was like, "But let me check and make sure we got the check." I've been under the weather, so I just kind of honestly forgot about it. And he was like, "Okay." And this guy hires me all the time, so I try to take really good care of him, of course. But I called the office and they're like, "No, we don't have the check." So I went back to my client. I was like, Jacob, they don't have the check." And my client is he's OCD literally, and he's diagnosed, and he is also on the autism spectrum, and he he has shared this with me, and he's very direct and he can be difficult. But regardless, he was like, "Hey, this is late. We don't have a lease." And I was like, "Whoa, whoa, relax. I don't know if that's correct. Let me take a minute to review. And in the meantime, I'm going to tell them they're in violation of this contract, right? Because I know that they're supposed to have this payment in 2 days ago." So I called Anthony. I was like, "Hey, my client is like basically saying if they don't give him this money today, he's going to put it back on the market." And he's having a little tantrum about it, but I need to know what my like legal obligations are here. And I didn't realize, like, I knew about the failure to pay rent clause, but I didn't realize that would apply to like the first month, that payment that they pay in advance or security deposit. So I was so glad that I asked Anthony because I was able to follow up with my client and first tell him the good news that the buyer was delivering, and they did deliver the certified funds to the office today. But also, hey, you need to actually serve formal notice today so that we have this 5 days notice in the hopper so that if they're not going to pay you, we could get it back on the market because we really can't do that until you serve this
Mhm.
notice. This
Right.
basically gives them 5 additional days, which made him even more mad at me because he's like, now basically you're giving them a week because you're already 2 days late and you didn't know it. And then, but he got it all out. He was happy. I got it resolved
Mhm.
today and said, you don't have to apologize anymore. I got it all out yesterday.
Yeah, good. I mean, I can see where a landlord gets frustrated with this. Totally. But we need to be able to know, look, this is what this paragraph says. You don't automatically toss it. Because if you got a hot market and you've got 3 applications and say this happens somewhere else, I could see a landlord say, well, go with number two. I don't have time for this. Well, if everyone signed, and this is the whole thing of your application has been approved. It starts with that, doesn't it?
Right.
We've approved your application. Let's put the lease together. And then I get another application that's even better. Am I beholden to the first application that I just gave a verbal that you're in? You know what, but you really can't once you've given approval. You said now let's execute a lease, but you do not have a lease in place. And then once you do have a lease in place, everything is bound by the lease. And so the landlord, if what he was saying, I appreciate he was upset. Now you're giving them a week. Well, no, you signed this lease that gives them 5 days to get caught up.
Right.
So we have to gently guide our clients, not just on leases, but anything else. You're signing this. I'm your agent, but you're the one on the dime for this. You're the one that has to get the inspection done in 7 days. You're the one that has to get the condo docs. You're the one, and but we're and sometimes they feel like, well, you're not in my corner. I am in your corner. I'm making sure that you obey what you said you would obey. That's what was
Yeah.
happening here.
And
Now,
and it is
yeah.
our responsibility though to ensure that first month's rent is being delivered to our office.
Hmm.
So you need to have some kind of reminder in your calendar or something. In my case, my assistant actually did remind me, but I was sick, so I didn't check my messages from her
Hmm.
that day. But you need to at least put a reminder in your calendar
What
to
was
say,
that?
"Hey, did I receive this?"
Yeah. Also, and I'm going to point out, there was a very inexperienced agent on the other side. We've
Yeah.
all been there. Want to show a lot of grace on that. And he like repented. I'm so sorry. I didn't know.
Yeah.
And now my broker, like, yeah, okay, you got it. But because the thought was the what we heard was it's in the mail. Oh, that sounds great. That's very encouraging. And he's, well, can't we just wait? And like, well, no, we need certified funds. That's what it says, certified funds. And so
Yeah.
sometimes the agent or the tenant may not know what that means.
It actually changed our policy a little bit because I actually said, when he said it was the checks in the mail, I was like, ooh, I wouldn't drop a cashier's or certified check in the mail. And that drew
No.
up a red flag for me. So that's when I was like, you do know these have to be certified funds. And then there was a lot of like, so that actually made a small policy change for us in which we said, when we send the list of utility providers after
Mhm.
lease signing and everything, part of that is going to be reminder, certified cashiers or electronic funds must be submitted to this address no later than X date.
Right.
Like we're going to put that in, like, so they're just because a lot of agents honestly do not read these leases.
Mm-mm. We just assume, well, we're signing it, so give me the money. Well, where does it
Right.
say that?
Yeah.
And so we're finding out here now in the just for my Maryland agents, it's not as clear, honestly, in the MA. How many Maryland agents here? Raise your hand. or
Oh.
speak? Okay, just me. All right. Okay. I'm going to talk to myself then. In Maryland, failure to pay, there is no waiting period. Landlord can go right to it. You didn't? Okay, bang, here. I'm going to give you notice. But they do have 10 days once they get notice, so there's still time there. All right, so you're going to get, let's move on to the next one here. This is, can you
Hey,
charge?
Anthony.
Yeah, go ahead.
Um, Sorry, this just came up and I wanted to get your opinion. It has something to do with leases.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, I'll just read you the email. I mean, I literally just got it and I wanted to get your advice on how to
Okay.
handle it. Okay, so my former client, the landlord, he said, I received the below email from my renter at the Weaver Drive address yesterday, and I'm wondering if you have come across this before and if you have any advice on how to best handle it. I'm not in a position to release him from the lease unless I get an acceptable vetted replacement is found who is willing to commit to 5,500 a month at least until 5/31/2026. We'd like you to help us find new tenants moving forward. How do you suggest proceeding? So he forwards me the email of his tenant, and basically they came across some financial trouble, and it was like a letter through his employer saying that basically he's about to lose his job, or like I don't know, they're just having payroll issues. So he said, I'm just going to highlight it. He said, our request, we respectfully request a mutual early termination of the lease and a written lease from further rent obligations with a move out date of either February 14th, 2026 or February 28th, 2026. The lease isn't up until May, right? So to minimize any disruption, we fully cooperate to help you re-rent the home quickly. We can keep. So is that, how do I go about it? Is
Well,
that
we don't.
something?
So,
Okay.
you know, you're into the lease now. And so here's our role in the leasing world once it's done. We're kind of on the sideline here. We want to
Uh-huh.
help them out if we can help them out, but we don't do the negotiation. We don't talk to the tenant or the landlord. So here, this is paragraph 25 of the VRLTA lease. And this is assuming this is the one they're using. If they got one from
Yeah.
Home Depot, then they need to go look at what they wrote, what they got from Home Depot. I'm not joking about it. Home Depot has a whole section of in their publications. Hey, here's some leases,
Oh my
and
God.
contracts. So early termination, if a condition exists at the beginning which constitutes a fire hazard, okay, they can get an early termination there. Um, all right. So this is talking about the first part of this paragraph is if something's wrong with the house and I can't move in,
Uh-huh.
then I can have an early termination.
Okay.
Further here, excepting above, the tenant will not be released from liability for rent and other charges due during lease term unless landlord agrees in writing to release them from such liability. So if the landlord wants to work something out, he can do that. And you'd said what? That he said, well, we have it that you can if I can find another renter at 5,500. Did they
Mhm.
have that in writing somewhere, or he's just assuming that?
I mean, what he wrote in writing is his email to him.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that was like I mean, it wasn't like an addendum to the lease. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know. I guess he didn't think he was also gonna
Okay.
get
So
out
the
of them too
lease,
early.
so this is what it says. This is what he signed. Everybody
Uh-huh.
did. I'm sorry for your
Yeah.
troubles, but you're still on the dime for the rent unless the landlord can agree in writing to release the tenant from such liability. If tenant vacates premises prior to the end of the lease, tenant is still responsible for what would have been the rent for the balance of lease term,
Hmm.
including physical damage and all that kind of stuff. In the event of an early term, do not really, yeah. So,
Okay.
and the landlord still has to, keep the property going and utilities and stuff like that as well. So
Hmm.
in this situation, they just need to have a discussion. How are we going to handle this? Because it does
Okay.
give him the ability to release them in writing, but he's got to
Hmm.
say, well, I'm going to get this on the market right away. I'll try to get this done as soon as possible. The challenge we have here is if the market's turned and I can't get it, then we need to have something in writing. Like if I had you on for 5,500, let's say I can only get 5,200. So now I'm short $300 a month. And how many more months are left in the lease?
Until May 31st.
May 31st. So we've got February, March, April, May. We got 4 months, 3 times 4. That's $1,200 short. So he may say, all right, great. I got a renter that can move in, but I can only get them for 5,200. You owe me $300 per month for the remainder. So I'll let you out and we can have an agreement that I'm going to take this out of the deposit and return you a short deposit. Because deposit can be used for unpaid rent and expenses that were deemed in the lease. So you can say, well, you have this deposit, but the deposit is not something you say, well, you're out. So they have to have an agreement that they can do that. They just can't take the deposit money.
Right.
And so
Okay.
right now the guy would need to be paying his rent. He's got February coming up, need another $5,500 and if he wants, he can put it back on the market. And so you see, you're giving him advice on what this lease says, but you're not the attorney. Just make sure
Right.
you're not giving
Okay.
them legal advice. Yeah. Christine, you got a
Yeah.
question?
Just want to call and check in before Courtney
Oh,
moved in with today.
Okay.
Are you talking about? Oh,
No.
I'm Chris. Oh,
Yeah.
Christine Whedon. Well, can I just follow up on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just so I'm clear. So basically, can I list it now or, sometime in an immediate future, or should I just wait until,
Yeah, you can.
the lease is up?
Yeah. Yeah, you can
Oh,
lease it
okay.
now because there is a showing paragraph in the lease. Access to premises. The landlord has
60 days, I think.
yeah, well, I've got a 90 and a 60. May show premises to provide 90 days prior to the end of lease term or show premises to prospective 60 days prior to the end of the lease term. Upon reasonable notification to tenant and at reasonable times, landlord or designated may show premises to prospective buyers 90 days before and 60 days for other tenants.
Oh, okay.
That's true, but what's happening here is we're altering this lease because the tenant needs out. So we don't need to give them 60 days, but all this does need to be in writing.
Okay.
Per paragraph 27, I do have 60 days prior that I can do this, but because you're leaving earlier, you're agreeing to let me start showing it now.
Okay.
And when does it matter? It matters when someone gets upset, goes sideways, and then all we have is an attorney looking at this.
Right.
Well, they didn't give you any notice. Well, that's where we need to have it all in writing, or they
Okay.
need to have it all in writing. And so we're not the ones helping them do that. They need to do that in between here and their tenant until you get it listed. Now you're just dealing with the transaction again to get it going. So yes, you can put it on the market again.
Okay.
And I would submit probably in this situation, the tenant is probably very motivated to let people in and see it to get out from underneath the lease.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a change.
Christine, you had a question?
Okay. Thank you.
I do. Thanks, Anthony. So I have a client whose tenant just moved in, and the tenant mentioned that she would like to, it's a 1-year lease, and wanted to pay possibly the whole year or at least 6 months up front. It
Right.
sounds good, but I thought that there was a potential downside of that to the landlord in terms of trying to
Yeah,
get
they
somebody
can
out.
pay up front. It has to be in a fund that the landlord, and it's got to be a separate fund. It can't be in his checking account, but it's got to be a separate fund just for those funds. And then the landlord can take out of that account each time it's due. So
Okay.
we have here prorated rent, monthly with security, pet,
Anthony,
it
I
is.
thought there was some rules how much upfront rent can be
That's what I
taken by the
thought.
landlord. At least at some
Well,
point.
there's rules on how much you can take for deposit, But on upfront rent, I think it's a year. I'd have to nail it down, but you can take up to a year of rent. All money other than security owed or paid to landlord under, including pet rent, prepaid rent more than 1 month in advance of the rent due date. Okay. So you can take prepaid rent, and that's in the code. And I'm apologize, I don't remember exactly what it says, but it's in the code, the Virginia code, that here's what you do with prepaid rent. What it does is it goes into an account, and that account is then drawn down from the landlord or the property management company, and then that money is drawn down on the first of the month or the fifth or whatever until it's depleted.
Okay.
But they can't just get, like, let's say they get 6 months in advance. So landlord can't just take that and go do what they want. It's not their money. It's just prepaid, drawn down 1 month at a time when it's due.
Okay. I
Okay.
thought there was something about eviction and not in terms of not paying, but any other like, violation that made eviction more difficult. But
Well, it can. I mean, you would hope if they're paying up front because it's not their money. It's not the landlord's money. It's not deposit money either. The deposit is the tenant's money. So you just can't take that unless you follow the guidelines of what it says in the lease. The prepaid rent, it's prepaid, but it's not a free for all.
okay.
Yeah,
All right. Thank you.
sure. Okay. Anything else on lease? Scott, did you have your hand up earlier on the lease?
Yeah, I was just going to say on Chris's question, getting in writing an agreement from that tenant to allow for early showings does not prejudice or change anything in the existing lease. So the landlord can do that, and they're still not obligated to do anything, or their freedom of action is not limited relative to working out some sort of deal on the lease terms for an early out or things like that.
So you're saying everything in the VRLTA lease will still stand true?
Yeah, until it's done.
Until you do an addendum that specifically changes certain provisions, yeah, that lease controls. If
Okay.
an email of saying the tenant says to the landlord, yes, I'm 100% fine if you show it on between the hours of X and Y, starting on Q date. To me, that would be written approval from the tenant to allow the landlord to permit showings.
Right.
Okay.
And
Now,
without.
go ahead.
I did find the prepaid rent. This is what's on your screen now. And I just put the link in the chat. And it just says it's got to be in an escrow account in a federally insured depository authorized to do business in Virginia by the end of the 5th business day. So someone gets that prepaid rent and they're out of country and they're banking with Orange Bank or a non-Virginia bank. They can't do that. It's got to be in Virginia. Okay. So there's rules there because they're dealing with someone else's money. And so I'm not a lawyer, but I can at least show them the what this says and what they can do with it, and say you may want to get legal advice if you're getting into an iffy area on that.
Anthony, anywhere in there does it say the maximum allowed amount that could be
No.
collected? Okay. I thought there was in
Agree
one
in
of
a
the
rent that
classes.
the tenant pay prepaid rent. That's all it says. If they receive prepaid, it shall be placed in an escrow account in a federally insured deposit and authorized to do business in Virginia by the end of the 5th business day following receipt. So they get the money on the 28th. They've got 5 business days to get all that money put into an account. And that account has to be an escrow account that they do not touch until it's time for rent to be paid. Okay. Remember, landlords, they love this thing. They love real estate. You've just entered the real estate business as an investor. It's not just free money every month. So anyway. All right. Any more on the leases?
Yeah, I have a question on leases.
Wow. I'm glad I brought this up today. This is good.
So basically, a client of mine that I helped, gosh, like back in maybe 2016 or 2017, They, they pinged me and they said, "Hey, would you see if they would offer to sell me this house?" And back then, I remember the lease said, the listing agent is due blank percent if they buy it, right? I don't think that's in the lease anymore. The rental agreement. So how do I go about it if it has, I mean, how do I go about it? Like, how do we get paid if I do this work for him, or do I contact the other broker to see if they would sell it and he would be the one in touch with the owners?
Um, so you're not you're connected with the landlord or the tenant?
The tenant.
Yeah. I'd get a buyer broker agreement with the tenant.
Okay.
And
Okay.
then you say, can you pursue it? Say, yeah, let's have this agreement that I'm pursuing this for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how much do you charge? Because I'm just doing the paperwork if they agree.
Yeah, I mean that's the discussion you have right up front. And you say the buyer say, is this the property? Because you can make that buyer broker agreement really narrow. Say, okay, I want you to pursue 123 Lois Lane landlord to see if he'll sell this to me. And if he does, I'll pay you 1.5% to put the deal together.
Okay.
And so you just do the 1.5%. That's I've done that for parties that they already know they're buying, they already know their price, they already know what they're wanting to do, and so I'll just charge them a reduced compensation because
Okay.
it's just getting the deal done. Now, it doesn't mean that's not going to come with some headaches. I had this one couple that was a referral to me from my past client of the neighbor across the street who wanted to sell it to the neighbor next door who was renting and they wanted to buy their house. So I get there and I say, well, you want me to facilitate them? Yes. Okay. I think I got 1.5 or 2%, whatever it is. First thing I found out by meeting with the owner, they had grossly underpriced it. I said, do you realize you could be getting 40 or $50,000 more on the open market? And they kind of just deadpanned me and said, that's okay. We told them we'd sell it for this amount of money. This is the whole big mistake owners make. They think they know what the market is. So anyway, so they were willing to let it go at about a $40,000-$50,000 discount to the neighbor. And I said, well, let's get everyone together. I did an agreement with them. I said, let's get everyone together. I said, so this is the price. I'm going to write the contract, and this is it. I said, now, do you guys need any closing cost assistance? And the buyer just kind of looked at each other and like, I said, had you guys talked about it? They said, well, no. I said, okay, how about this? How about I get together with the buyers and we write up the offer that they want to offer? And they said, okay, that sounds good. So this is the thing they don't understand of all this little bitty stuff that has to be taken care of in the confidence of the buyer or the confidence of the seller, and not everyone just get together and do it. Anyway, I went off the deep end there. Sorry about that.
No, that's good.
But
Okay.
in the lease, that's what I would do. I just, in this world now, yeah, hey, great, I'll do that for you. Let's get a buyer brokered agreement together. If I do this for you, it's going to cost X, and I can ask for that from the seller and explain that the money comes from your cash and their equity. And so you both are kind of paying for it, but let's do 2% or 1.5% or whatever.
Oh, you mean the buyer and I mean the
Well, you
landlord
start with
and
the
the-
buyer, and then your offer is going to have the commission in there.
Oh, okay. I
You're
see.
still going to write a contract.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
You're just
Okay,
not going to
so
represent. Yeah.
essentially the seller's going to pay for my commission.
No, the buyer's money is going to pay. Y'all know my argument on that one, which is perfect that we go on to the next question, which is, where is it? Can y'all see that? Can you charge less for your service? Does anyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Thank you. So this comes into the next question I have. We're starting to get this now. The market's definitely heating up and they want to find out, well, I see this is usually on the buyer side. Well, I know, you want 3%, but man, what if I can't get that? And there's all this whole thing here. So a few things here are, number one, I got to remind them, whatever we agree to here in this buyer agreement is the most I can ask for in the contract. So give me the opportunity to earn my fee. Okay. So that's one thing that we want to talk about. If I can't get the full amount, can you make up the difference? That's a question to the buyer. Well, no, I can't. Well, that's not a problem because if necessary, we can amend the agreement with the brokerage agreement amendment form. Okay. Now, I always talk about lay out where the money's coming from. I don't like using the term, well, the seller's paying the commission. The seller's paying the compensation. And does anyone review what I say in this realm? How's the compensation being paid? Anybody want to take a stab at that?
The buyer and the seller, because it comes from the seller's equity and the buyer's financing.
Yeah, I gave you that cheat note right there. Yeah, that's what I told you.
I didn't read it.
It was not a trick question. There we go. Because here's the thing. The buyer in our area, and on average, brings in 15%. But what I just to make it easy for calculation, let's do 20%. Let's say it's an $800,000 house. They're bringing in 160 grand. The bank is now giving them another, whatever, $640,000. So all that money comes to the table. So whose money is it that's paying for everything?
Buyers.
It's the buyer's cash in loan liquidating the seller's equity. And the seller's got their own expenses. They may have a mortgage. 2/3 of Americans that own houses have a big old mortgage on it. That's the first thing they're going to pay off. And then there's closing cost expenses, of which part of that is the compensation to the agents. So is it on the seller's side of the sheet? Yes. It's got to be somewhere. But who's paying for it is a combination of the two. And I like really putting that out there because in this world, and honestly, I've been using this for like 5-6 years before all this stuff happened. So that sellers understood you're not doing this alone. You're not writing a check. You know, the buyer is putting all that cash on the table. So that's another thing that I talk about. The value I bring to the table will outweigh the 0.5% you're asking for. If not, I'm more than happy to rebate my compensation. Just give me a chance to get the full fee. Does that sound fair? And if they're quiet like that, like y'all are, that's not a good thing. Because most times they would say, yeah, that sounds fair. So right, I'm not going to damage you. I even have a form and I'll show them the form. I'll bring that one up to you in a moment. And then this one's for this is for the strong at heart, but I love using this one. Is it just about the commission? If it is, why are you considering me? What I've always said is, what am I doing here? It's like, that's what I really say. Is it at the commission? What am I here for? There's plenty of agents that'll do it for less. Why don't you just sign with one of them? And then I'm quiet and I let them answer the question. Because what are they usually going to say if we're sitting at that table?
Oh, no, Anthony.
What?
They would say, oh, no, Anthony, I want to use you.
Yeah, I like you. I trust you. I mean,
Right.
the last time I used this is the buyer said, well, you know, they said you're better than sliced bread. I said, well, there you go. I don't know what to tell you.
Anthony,
Yeah.
I love your optimism about it. Yet we all know that
Yeah.
we're up against several other agents that
Yeah.
do lower their commission. So we're potentially are losing business by, saying, well, talk to other realtors, see what you can get.
Well,
So
wait, that's not how I'm saying it. I am truly saying, what am I doing here if you just want a less commission? And folks, this is not new. I've been saying this since the 1990s. Okay. When I got real estate in 1995, and I remember the first time it came to me, this guy was going after this agent. I said, well, and she was sitting across from me. We're on the phone. And I said, well, if you got other agents that will take it for less, why are you hiring Chris? Her name was Chris. Why are you hiring Christine? And when I said that, her eyes just went like, what are you doing? Across from the table. It's like, what? And the guy like, well, she's really good and tenacious and she's very trustworthy, isn't she? They said, yeah. I said, well, do you think that's worth it? I said, tell you what, if we get to the table and you don't think she's earned that compensation, we are more than happy to come back and give you a rebate. Does that sound fair? And they said, yes. We hung up the phone. She quit sweating. She says, I never would have thought to say that. I said, well, I'm telling you, this is the way there's a reason they're sitting in front of you. And you at least, and like I said, that's for the brave at heart. I don't have a problem using it. And maybe because I'm old and gray and bald that I can say it because they look at me like, yeah, there's experience sitting in front of me. But for everyone on this call, I'm looking at all the names, all y'all, that's the pearl of y'all, have experience. You have the wind as another of the experience of wind underneath your wings to be able to say, I appreciate that you want me to just cut it and you keep talking about everyone else. Why haven't you hired someone else? Maybe that's the better way of saying it. Why haven't you just hired someone else if that's what it's about? Because they really do want to use you. That's why you're in front. Well, I understand you're really good at what you do. I see your signs everywhere. I see this. Or you're referred in. And, Bob said you were great and that you're very experienced. And I got one guy, I love it when he refers me. He says, I'd give Anthony my wallet. I mean, he's going to take care of me. And that's worth something. And the 0.5% on the average price house in our area, we're talking $4,000 difference. 10 of those is 40 grand. And I'm just saying on this particular thing, we need to at least give it a chance to say this dialogue and at least say it. If you can't say, is it just about the commission, then say, well, let's talk about the value I bring to the table. And if I can't get that for you, I'm more than happy to give you a rebate. Does that sound fair? Most people are going to say, yeah, that sounds fair. Wouldn't they? Would most people say that sounds fair? Say, yeah, save time.
Yes.
Yeah. So, so, and I get it. But if you don't feel confident with that, then go ahead and say, hey, that's no problem. We can do it at that lower level and deal with it. But I'm like, give yourself a chance. You're the one sitting in front of them and give these dialogues a chance to work out. Because it's also showing that you're confident in what you're going to bring to the table. Okay. All right. So that was the commission question that came up. Thanks for bringing that up. Any other questions on that? This question came up this week. Must the condo HOA docs be delivered before the buyer can void the contract based on the docs? No, they don't in Virginia. And that's in, right here. It's in paragraph 8, triple I. At any time prior to settlement, if the resale certificate is not delivered to buyer or buyer's agent, they can cancel the contract. Okay. So that one is also another question that came up this week. They don't have to be delivered. In Maryland, they do have to be delivered, but they got to be delivered within a certain time frame. If they don't get it to you in 15 days in the MAR contract, then you can cancel if you haven't received it. Okay. All right. Any questions on that? Okay. I've been getting a lot of questions, and check me on this, Anthony, kind of calls on the office exclusive. All right. So first of all, the office exclusive has to be in the listing agreement. It's paragraph 12, and I'll bring that up in just a moment. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that you then have to bring in the Bright MLS disclosure about office exclusive form. So you have the Bright MLS disclosure form for buyers and sellers, landlords and tenants. There's a secondary form if they go office exclusive. And then there's a KW United instruction of services to be provided form. You said you want to be pre-market marketing. Here's my form and let's sign that. Okay. So let me go to that first and show you those forms. So which one is this one? What am I in? Yeah, this is the buyer broker agreement. So, excuse me, this is a listing agreement. So in paragraph 12, which one am I in? Hold on a second. Oh, I'm in the lease. And there's the lease. Here we go. Okay, paragraph 12. So in paragraph 12 of the listing agreement, you're clicking on A, whether it goes in the MLS or not. If it does not go in the MLS, then we're going to an office exclusive. Okay. And if it's office exclusive, then we have to put it into another form here. And this is the MLS disclosure form. That's the new one. And then this is the office exclusive form that the seller, it's an acknowledgement. I understand how powerful the listing system is. I understand all subscribers have access to it. I understand all these things, and I'm willing to not be in the MLS. And they sign off on this form. All right. So this is the office exclusive form. Then they have a form that this is a KW form, a KW United form. Here are the things I'm going to do on the pre-listing marketing. All right. The purpose of this addendum is to supplement certain provisions of the listing agreement as specified below. Except for those terms expressly added, this addendum shall not alter, modify, or change a listing. And then this is what it is, this bold part. And this is giving us the permission to advertise it to my database, to have an open house, to bring in other agents. So we put this form together because we wanted to have instruction clearly from the seller on what it was going to take to market the property before we went in the MLS. Any questions on this?
You know, there's a typo in the blue highlighted.
The blue highlight? No.
Yeah. May be, it's missing a B. Beginning of the third line, may be, but it's not limited to, and there's no B.
Oh, so yeah, maybe, but yeah, good point. Thanks. I'll take that to the editors. All right.
Old habits die hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. And then once you go into active, you take the brokerage representation agreement amendment. You don't have to fill out a whole nother listing agreement. All right. You click it and make it active in the listing agreement. It's exclusive right to sell. The listing is between. What are we doing? Other. Okay. Or broker shall re-enter the MLS information on blank and click the property is now moving to being coming soon or active. Okay. And then you go in the MLS and you just click through it. You go into your listing management segment, say, I'm now going active or I'm going coming soon.
Gotcha.
Any questions on those steps? And don't worry if you've got questions later. I got no problem you calling me and we talk about it again. And that's all. Yeah. All right. And I think that's it on the Q&A. Did you guys have anything else besides that stuff?
I have a question.
Yes.
Recently something came up that I'm not sure if there's a paperwork needed. On one of my listings, the seller said that she's open to offering some sort of a buyer broker compensation, and also she's open to assist buyer with a closing cost. Again, depends how much they're asking for, one versus the other, and so on and so forth. I know in the MLS, when you're entering the listing, it does give you the ability to click a button that says seller willing to offer compensation on the closing cost, right? Is there
I
any,
wouldn't say compensation. I would say willing to offer closing cost assistance.
that's what I meant. But
Yeah,
in the
okay.
MLS, when you're entering a listing, there is a box that you can click yes or
Yes.
no. But as far as paperwork, I guess there's nothing in the listing agreement that needs to be checked I mean, she expressed it verbally that she's open to
Right.
it, but
Yeah.
right, if she's paying 3% in buyer broker agreement, she's definitely not going to offer buyer broker or buyer closing cost versus if it's less for buyer broker compensation, she potentially might be open to offering something.
Yeah.
There's no legal, not like legal, no paper
I'd put it here.
work required, right?
I would put it under additional terms right there. Do
So
y'all see
if
that?
it's too late, I mean, she signed this when we were talking about it. I just made a note in my notes
Oh,
that
then I would go back to here and put it in other. I want instruction from them before I put it out to the public in case they say, I didn't say that. Verbal's not working for me on compensation to people.
oh,
Because then people could say, hey, you said this, and then it's, it's changed out.
okay, thank you.
So that's all. Just use this. This is the agreement amendment. Say, hey, I just want to confirm that that's what you said. Great, sign it here. Offer up
And
to $10,000 or whatever it was.
Anthony, you're just talking about, let me ask the question. It seems to me there's a difference between affirmatively checking a box in the MLS listing that goes out to the public saying seller is willing to consider
Mhm.
closing cost assistance.
Yes.
That seems to me to need a directive from the client to check that box to cover our interests
I would agree.
versus a scenario where the selling client says, well, yeah, it depends on what the offer is. Would I be willing to do that? Maybe. It depends on buyer agent compensation, other things. I wouldn't think that needs to be anything put into writing because that's entirely subject to what comes in an offer.
Yeah.
And
What
how
I'm
you
what I'm
respond to
talking
that.
about, I think what Anya's talking about is the seller has instructed her to market that. And if they're
Well,
Right.
instructing,
she didn't really. She said she is willing
Mhm.
to offer buyer broker compensation depending on what kind of other compensation she's going to be paying to the buyer broker agent. So it's not her willingness to say, "Hey, please do offer 10,000 or please," right? Like she just said, "I'm open to offering closing cost
Oh,
assistance." Yet, right? It depends on
Mhm.
the situation. It's not like, "Hey, I advertise that I'm
Yeah.
paying people's closing cost."
So that's almost like the addendum to the listing agreement on offering of optional buyer broker, but that's specifically to buyer broker a compensation. And it sounds like y'all just had a discussion. Yeah, I'm open to do that. I would not promote that in the MLS unless we have a situation where we're not getting any traffic. But if she's saying that, you're right. It's gonna be nailed down in a contract. I thought what you meant was, yeah, in the agent remarks or something, she wanted me to put, hey, we'll consider buyer closing cost assistance. I would want something signed off that they wanted me to say that in public. That's what I'm talking about. But what you're saying is there's just a verbal, then I
I mean,
wouldn't
that's what she
promote it.
said, and there's nothing in the paperwork that allows me to, check a box. Yeah, I know in the MLS
Yeah.
there is a box to be checked. Is seller willing to offer buyer broker, Jesus, closing assistance?
Yeah. And then I would submit it doesn't say it specifically, but I'd put it in 33, paragraph 33.
Okay.
Yeah. Good catch though. You don't want to promote that and then seller be all upset. Okay.
Okay.
Anything else? Everyone got your bread and butter and toilet paper?
Not yet.
Um, all joking aside, if you have a listing and it's vacant, I would go by to check, just do a perimeter check on the property and make sure the furnace is up. If it's got if you have a heat pump, if you can in the next day or so, get a neighbor to take a broom and brush that stuff off if it's vacant, because that's a serious issue when that thing gets all cluttered up with snow for heat pumps. So,
Same thing with the outdoor hose bibs with the sub
yeah, by now
freezing
we should be having,
temperatures
yeah,
coming.
those should be winterized by now.
Well, you want
I
to,
know, but I'm just saying if your seller hasn't done that, this would be the time to make sure they get that. It doesn't take long, like 10 minutes. It's not hard. But what I'm looking at is for vacant properties with heat pumps, go tap on the door and say, when you get done doing your sidewalk, could you go over here and brush off you know, the
the
snow
other
from
thing
the
I
heat
would
pump?
suggest, if somebody has a house on the market and the sellers are living there, I would urge them to keep the steps de-iced.
Yeah.
Because the last thing you want is somebody coming for a showing and falling. And I'm not talking about how it impacts making an offer. It's
Yeah.
somebody has a slip and fall, and
Yeah.
now you've got an insurance claim.
For sure. All right. Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Anthony.
All right, y'all. Take care. Be safe out there.
Stay safe.
Sure.